Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your break because our keynote speaker will certainly inspire and motivate. I'm already excited. It is now my esteemed honor to welcome a trailblazer, a change agent, an advocate, a mentor, and a true servant leader, the Honorable Judge Rickye McKoy-Mitchell, to introduce our keynote speaker. Let's give Judge Rickye McKoy-Mitchell a virtual round of applause, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Larry. And with that kind of introduction coming from you, I am truly honored. Thank you so very much. I had the opportunity to be able to visit some of the different sections this morning and hear the presentations, and it was amazing. So thank you all for all you're doing. And thank you, Mr. Larry, with all of that you had on you, with all these trial preparations, for coming through for us, being the amazing master of ceremony that we knew you would be. Thank you. Well, as Mr. Larry said, I could not be more excited and actually any more honored to be able to introduce our keynote speaker today, managing partner of the Ferguson, Chambers, and Sumter law firm, attorney Geraldine Sumter. Now, you know, we have to give our props on the background, but after doing that, I really want to share with you why I'm honored and excited about this introduction. Attorney Sumter, as I'm sure many of you already know and have had the pleasure and honor of meeting her, graduated from Howard University with her Bachelor of Arts degree, majoring in political science and economics with honors, as we know would be the case, Phi Beta Kappa, Pi Sigma Alpha with the Political Science Honor Society, and summa cum laude. Then she went on to Duke University School of Law, where she obtained her Juris Doctorate degree. And again, you know that she was a litigator from the time that began, as she was part of that national winning Team Frederick Douglass moot court competition and continued to be on the School of Law moot court board. Now, unlike most of us, and I think my husband would say, he kind of saw me go around into different places as I was going through my legal career, but with attorney Sumter, she began after graduation being a clerk, law clerk with the Honorable Charles Beckton for the North Carolina Court of Appeals. After leaving there, then she was a staff attorney with the Palmetto Legal Services. And then she has now recently celebrated 40 years, even though I still do not believe it, as I look at her and think about the time I've been able to spend with her, that it could not have been that long, that she is a managing partner with the Ferguson, Chambers, and Sumter law firm. And as many of us already know, the history of that law firm and its work, especially in the area of discrimination. And also in that same area, attorney Sumter has continued her work. She's a member of just numerous professional affiliations, but I also want to make sure you know that attorney Sumter is not just about the work that happens here in our community, but about the issues that impact across the world. And she's also with the South African Black Lawyers Association Legal Education Center and has been the American Faculty Coordinator for the Trial Advocacy Program there since 1993. And again, she's been on many professional and civic boards, and with a variety, whether that may be in the arts area, the legal profession, and other areas in which she participated. She also recently, even though because of the person she's very humble, does not push for information. I had to try to drag information out of her legal assistant, who I still didn't get all the information that we know attorney Sumter has, because I want to share with you that just a few months ago, in November of 2023, that attorney Sumter received, and I want to make sure I'm using her specific words as she talked about it. She received the North Carolina Bar Association Labor and Employment Law Section Distinguished Practitioner and Service Award. And that was on Saturday, November 5th in Asheville. Now, this award was presented by one of her former partners, John Gresham, at their annual meeting. But true to form, as she was being informed about this award, she said that in talking to him when he told her it was coming up, to be honest with you, when John Gresham told me that I was going to receive this award, I said, no, give it to somebody else. Seriously, I have this philosophy that no one should get an award for doing something that I feel privileged to do. That is managing partner Geraldine Sumter, for whom I am eternally grateful. As I began my legal practice here in Charlotte, she was one of my first mentors. And can you imagine seeing this amazing woman that looked like me, who was doing such incredible work in areas of discrimination, wills and estate. I mean, and she certainly has a name for herself and much deserved of that reputation. Although, again, as you will hear, she still remains a very humble servant of the community. So it is my honor to now begin a conversation. So not just a keynote speech, but a conversation with managing partner of the Ferguson, Chambers, and Sumter law firm, attorney Geraldine Sumter. Good morning, or afternoon now, actually.
Well, hello, how are you? It's a pleasure to be here.
We are thrilled and truly honored to have you here. And what we're going to do as people are listening is ask you questions that have been submitted. And I know that attorneys, judges, law admissions folks, students, high school and college are just jumping at the bit to be able to ask some questions as well. But let's get that conversation started. So as you talked about that you feel privileged to do this work, one of our always first question is why? What made you feel privileged to do the work that you're doing and becoming an attorney?
Well, you know, I will date myself considerably when I say this, but when I was growing up, watching a black and white television, one of the programs was this show called Perry Mason. And so I watched that and I was really impressed with that process. And I didn't know any lawyers then. So I decided, well, you know, I could be a lawyer. So I'm going to be a lawyer. And I thought that I would do criminal law. But when I was in the ninth grade, our school system decided to close the African-American high school in the community that I went to, and to force bus all of the Black students to a predominantly white school as their way of complying with Swan versus Charlotte Mecklenburg's decision from the Supreme Court, which said that busing was an appropriate tool by which to desegregate schools in the South. Well, none of the people in my community wanted to see this pattern of the Black schools being the ones that were being closed all of the time. Now, it didn't have the same facilities as the white schools. That was a vestige of segregation. But I became very engaged in protest and political activity around that. And in the process, met two African-American lawyers, both of whom were men. One was Matthew J. Perry, who was a legal defense fund cooperating attorney. He was a middle-aged man, very stereotypical of what a quote lawyer would be, you know, dressed down, three-piece suit and all of that. And then there was a younger firebrand militant lawyer named John Roy Harper. John Roy Harper was flamboyant, had the red, black, and green flags and the big afro, and drove this little blue and black Porsche convertible. So it was, you know, a wide difference in their style, but their advocacy was the same. It was to obtain justice and equality for people who were disenfranchised or who were discriminated against. And so I said, yes, this is the lawyer. This is what I want to do. Criminal work is fine, but I really want to find out about this civil rights work. And, you know, all of the time that I was in high school, I was trying to figure out about the Constitution and about civil rights, because we had so many problems with that desegregation effort, that I became acquainted with something called the American Civil Liberties Union. And Rickye, you know about them,
Yes.
you were engaged with them as well. And so they were responsible for disseminating information to us to help us understand our freedom of, you know, our basic constitutional rights to freedom of speech and assembly and association. And so I just, at that point, developed the passion for this civil rights work and knew that I wanted to be a lawyer to do it. Now, I got the impression from John Roy Harper, who was a solo practitioner, that that was an economically difficult thing to do as a solo practitioner doing this work, because my community was taking up quarters and dollar bills to pay them. And in hindsight, that money might have been enough to pay them for their gas, but it was not enough to pay them.
Exactly.
And so they were giving a lot of free services to the community. And, you know, I'd walk up to John Roy Harper's office, was a small office in an upstairs over a business. But Matthew Perry had 3 law partners. It was Jenkins, Perry, and Pride. They were established. They had a nice office. They did personal injury, real estate, all, you know, the whole gambit of law, and they looked more prosperous. And so that taught me that if I wanted to succeed in practicing civil rights law, I better have something other than civil rights law to rely on. And so that's where that passion comes from. And I know that it's a privilege. I know that there are people who go to law school thinking that they want to do the work that I do. But because of the realities of the financing of law school education and the amount of debt that people end up with when they go to law school, they do not have the opportunity to do the work that I do. They don't have the liberty and the freedom not to look for big paying corporate jobs or what have you, or in-house counsel or whatever. They can't afford to do that and live without those big paychecks. And so I am privileged in that, one, I'm passionate about this work and I am able to do it and make a living. Now, I'm not a rich lawyer, never wanted to be one. I can't say I never wanted to be a rich lawyer, but it doesn't bother me that I'm not a rich lawyer, rich in terms of huge financial successes. You know, I'll never drive a Porsche. You know, I am satisfied. I am rich in so many other ways. You know, that's the why I say I'm privileged. You know, it's an opportunity to utilize skills and knowledge that I have gained over the years to apply it to be of service to my community.
And so now I think as people are listening to you, they understand and hear the same passion that I've known from you from the beginning. But, you know, even with that passion, you still had to get into law school. We knew that was going to be one of the early steps. So what was that process like for you? Especially when we think about now the costs that are involved in costs, even at the time we were in law school. So how did you get to that point?
Well, you know, I say that I'm privileged, I really am. I went to Howard University as an undergrad, and I didn't come from rich parents, but I was fortunate in that I got a scholarship at Howard, and I did some work study and what have you, but I really had, I left Howard without owing Howard any money.
Wow.
And so I had 4 years of undergrad with no debt. That is a privilege in this day and time even. And then I applied to some law schools, but I knew that I always wanted to practice in the South. And so I thought it would be better for me to go to law school in the South and interact with people in Southern law schools and what have you. I applied to the other schools, but I didn't go. I only went to Duke. I was again fortunate in that because of my grades and law and undergraduate school, I received a full tuition scholarship from Duke. Now I had to borrow a little bit of money, but when I tell you, when I left Duke, I only owed them $10,000.
And that
You
was
know,
impressive.
people can't get by on $10,000 for a
Yes,
semester, but I
exactly.
knew I wanted to do this civil rights work. And I knew that it would be crazy for me to expect that I was going to have this really high paying job that would just pay off the student loans. Now, fortunately, the interest rate on my student loan was very low. It was 2%. It was a National Student Defense Loan. I don't even know if they still have those. But I was supposed to pay it off over 10 years. And I think my monthly bill was $96.80 or $98.60 a month that I was supposed to pay for 10 years. And at some point I thought, why don't you just go on and pay this loan off? But I kept remembering my tax instructor who said, if the interest rate on your loan is lower than the interest rate that your bank is paying, you don't pay your loan off. So I did. But, you know, to leave law school, even in 1981, with only $10,000 in debt was phenomenal. Now,
Yes.
I lived a pretty Spartan lifestyle. I did not have a fancy car. I didn't even have a car. I just took the bus from East Campus to West Campus. Didn't bother me. You know, that was not an additional expense that I wanted to take on. If I had wanted to purchase a car, I am sure that I could have borrowed money as a part of the student loan to buy the car. I was not interested in having a lot of debt. And so, you know, I was privileged in that way. And so I knew that it was my good grades that got me into Howard, plus, you know, essay and what was this? What SAT scores get you into undergrad and LSAT get you into law school. But while I was at undergrad, I had a wonderful political science teacher who was a lawyer, but also taught political science and constitutional law. And she was a mentor, walked us through the process, made sure it was her pre-law advice to us that I think guided us. And I mean, she wrote reference letters, you know, so I did everything that I thought I could do to make myself a good candidate for a scholarship or a low interest loan. So, you know, and I was engaged in extracurricular activities. I was a research assistant to a professor, you know, wrote papers. You know, you do the stuff that you need to do to make yourself competitive.
Yes.
And so that I would say is critical. More important, or equally important, is that as an undergraduate, to make yourself successful in law school, I think you need to take the hard courses which are going to require you to develop and improve your analytical skills and your writing skills. Very few lawyers, and there are some who can do it. You know, if all you do is traffic and DWIs, you aren't writing a lot of briefs. But in the work that I do, I have to write briefs all the time. It is not uncommon for me to be writing a brief every week, you know, on some issue or another, or a major brief, both at the district court level and at the appellate level. So I would say work hard, get a major that is going to require you to learn how to write and to write well. And if you are not a good writer, now don't worry about that. That's why you're going to an undergraduate school. Get the extra courses. You know, if you're not getting really good grades in writing, or if your history papers or political science papers are coming back to you and they've got a lot of red stuff on them because of your writing skills, just go take another writing course as an elective so that you make yourself a better writer. There was a professor, Tony, oh God, what was Tony's last name? Tony Gildings, I think, who taught at the University of Maryland and taught at Howard, who told a story about his poor education up to the point of college. And when he got to college, they told him that he couldn't write. And what he did upon a tip from some professor was he made himself write a good paragraph every day. Every day. He said he would read Time magazines, the newspapers, all of that, and other books. And he would just pick a subject, make the topical sentence, the supporting sentences, made sure everything worked right. And he honed his writing skills. He wrote books, he lectured, he was a guest writer, columnist for newspapers and what have you. But all of that was from a student who started out as an undergraduate being told that he could not write and that he would fail because of his writing. So whatever your deficiencies are, and we all have them, we go to school to learn, you're learning every day, you're going to improve everything you have. I was a poli-sci major. I actually completed the coursework for two majors, economics and political science. Economics was very helpful to me because it helped with logical and analytical skills and abilities. And I would tell you, even if you were in science and you decided you wanted to go to law school, that is not a problem. Just be able to write about whatever it is that you're interested in. And the law has so many broad applications. You may have the stereotypical image of the lawyer as a litigator or a judge, but there is very little that you do in this world, from breathing, sleeping, eating, walking, talking, that is not governed by some law, regulation, or statute. And so whatever your interests are, there is some law and some area in the law that covers it. And so if you are artistic and you are interested in law and interested in how artists are treated, then intellectual property might be something you want to look at. There's sports and entertainment law. There's construction law. There's air and space law. I always thought that the civil rights movement would have peaked and taken care of all of our problems by the time I got 50 or 55, and then I would go and pursue air and space law, which I think is fascinating. Just, taking color and race and discrimination out of stuff. If it were an all equal world, I'd be on some place, some panel, some firm doing air and space law. And I think I heard Nikki Giovanni at a speech. I guess it was, I was at Howard. I think it was a general speech. And she was talking and she said, yeah, I'm talking about this, that, and the other, but I'm thinking about what in the world is going out there in space. Because the man is going to space. We got to follow him. We got to see what he's doing. We can't be left behind. Earth can't be a penal colony when they up and leave Earth. We got to be ready to go with them. And I thought, yeah, outer space would be nice. I could date myself some more. I liked Lost in Space and the Jetsons when I was growing up. So I'm waiting for that vehicle that can roll on the streets and pop up and fly in the air when the traffic gets bad. So that's an aside. That doesn't tell you anything about law school, but I say all of that to say the law offers you so many, many opportunities that I would just say, be prepared in those very basic skills and walk through the many, many doors that are going to be open to you.
And we see you, Attorney Sumter, and just your space, your aura of all that you've done. And we stay in awe of that. But what about when you start, and still sometimes when you get those challenges, because I know, particularly in the area of discrimination work, everybody's not a fan.
Right.
It's not always easy to get the outcomes that you want. So coming into it before where you are now with your battle scars, what was it like for you before, and what keeps you going?
When you say what was it like for me before, you mean when I first
began,
started?
right, when you began as an attorney.
Well, my first job was as a clerk,
Right.
which was a good thing, and I would recommend it to anybody. I clerked for Charles Beckton on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. He was the second Black person to serve on the North Carolina Court of Appeals in the history of the state of North Carolina. And that was a wonderful experience. I got to understand how the North Carolina Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court worked. And then I worked for 6 months with the legal services program in South Carolina, which is what I thought I wanted to do until the politics of the Reagan era came in and limited legal services ability to do civil rights work. Right. And so I clerked for this same firm between my first and second year in law school, and I was offered a chance to join the firm by Julius Chambers, and so I did. Now, Mr. Chambers had me come to work on December 31st, 1982. That's New Year's Eve. Well, actually, the office manager told me I needed to come to sign some papers. On January 1st, 1983, Mr. Chambers met with me and another associate and gave us all of this work. And on January 3rd, January 2nd, I was driving down to Fayetteville, North Carolina to take a bunch of depositions. Wow. And, I had not taken that many depositions. I'd taken one deposition in that 6 months that I'd been over at Legal Services. And I was doing discrimination work, and it was new, it was challenging. There were so many people who come before me. I was not the first woman in this firm. Yvonne Mims Evans was the first woman in our firm, and she was a mentor for me. It was just wonderful having her blaze that trail ahead of me and help me as I was getting acclimated. All the men in the firm were very helpful too, but the woman helped me understand what it was like to be a woman in the practice of law. Yes. I was in federal court down in Wilmington, North Carolina, and in Fayetteville. The court moved from Wilmington to Fayetteville. The judge was an older white man. He was always polite and kind. I had no problems with him, except every morning he would walk onto the bench and he would say, "Good morning, gentlemen." Mm-hmm. And I said, did I hear this right? "Good morning, gentlemen." So I went to his clerk, who was a male, and I said, "You got to tell this judge, this gentleman thing is not working." So another week goes by and he's still coming up, "Good morning, gentlemen." So I corner the law clerk again. I go, this is not good. This is not good. I don't feel, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to speak to him? Because I'm not a quote gentleman. So at some point we were called back into chambers to have a discussion. And he says, "Gentlemen, come on in." I said, "No, this is too much." So I said to Rick Glazier, his clerk, "You got to talk to him." So the next morning, the judge comes out on the bench and he says, "Good morning, counsel." And he said, "Now, Ms. Sumter, I want you to know I have no problem with women appearing in my court. One of my law clerks is a woman. My daughter practices law. And so I just want you to know, I want you to be comfortable that I don't have a problem with women practicing in my court." I said, "Thank you, Your Honor." And after that, every morning, it was "Good morning, counsel." And I was happy to say, "Good morning, Your Honor." Mm-hmm. You know, I encountered, either because I was a woman or an African American, or the intersection of being an African American and a woman, a lot of mess from white men in the profession. But, you know, one of the things that I learned from Matthew Perry was, if you lose your cool, you lose your case. Don't lose your cool, you don't lose your case. And I'd also learned just over the years from, you know, wise old Black women that I associated with, elementary school teachers, my mother, relatives, that, you know, you don't fool around with riffraff. You let stuff roll off and keep your eyes on what it is you need to do. And so that was always my philosophy. You know, you can tell when people are baiting you, you can tell when they're kind of making comments to put you down. And my thing was, let me just beat you.
Mhm.
And that's going to be, and that was how I dealt with it. Yeah, you might come up in here talking. This one man told me, oh yes, we're filing a motion to dismissal. Do you want to take this dismissal voluntarily, or do you want to have to go into court and get us? Come on, let's go to court.
Exactly.
And, you know, he got handed his papers, and that was, you know, I have another problems out of him. But it's, you know, you just have to establish yourself with integrity, with your sense of confidence. And, you know, I think people just kind of get the impression, I don't know if I have a mean face or a mean glaze or whatever it is. It's like, you know, I'm not the one to be messing with some foolishness. Come on, we can argue over the substance, but just plain foolishness, nah, that's not me.
Well, you've actually addressed a lot of the questions I wanted to talk to you about, which is what we needed to happen. What I also heard you just say is, while you want to make sure that you're maintaining that level of professionalism, you also took that extra step in talking to the judicial clerk to make sure that your position was heard.
Right.
And so how do you encourage, and what do you see as your legacy that you would want to leave here, for particularly as we're talking to high school students and college students? And we're not, believe me, I'm not on a move to talk about anybody dying. I've had enough of that going on in my life, so we're not trying to do that. But while we have you, and for our high school and college students to see you, what is it that you would say to them, and maybe even would have said to yourself as you were coming up, that they need to make sure to have in them or to do that moves them forward?
You know, first of all, the law and the practice of law is not the beginning and the end of me. And it should not be the beginning and the end of you. I was born a human being. I'm going to die a human being. I'm a lawyer now, no telling what I might be when I die, or what title or position I might be when I die. So I think you have to be true to yourself. You always should be as honest and as candid as you can, in as tactful a way as you can. I've been working on being tactful for a long time. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not, but we must all work on it. You want to always have integrity. You want to, I came up in an era where there was still some desegregation. You know, I remember seeing Ku Klux Klan people parading, handing out pamphlets on the streets in Columbia when I was a little child. So as an African American, we were always taught that we needed to be a credit to our race. And so, you know, everything I do, I try to do in such a way that it is a quote credit to my race. And my mother always reminded us, my mother had 5 daughters. She always wanted her daughters to be respectable women, to hold ourselves up as respectable women. She didn't really care. I'm the only lawyer in my family. She didn't care what her daughters did. She just wanted them to be self-sufficient and not dependent on others. And so I think that we all especially at the point at which, you know, I am as privileged as I am to, quote, have been able to go through law school and to be satisfied in the career that I have, it is true, to whom much is given, much is required. And so I would hope that whatever anybody takes from me, it is this firm belief that I have in being a public servant. And there are many ways to be a public servant. For some people, it is just one-on-one contact, you know, making sure that one person that they know is well fed and clothed and cared for. And for others, it's a more public and broader platform, but every platform, every effort at public servants is important. It's in educating children, it's in tutoring children, it's in, you know, when you see a child struggling, it's not your child, you don't even know whose child it is, maybe. But to give somebody that push, it's just such little things sometimes give young people confidence. And that's what it's about. It's having the confidence to push ourselves is based on how someone else has affirmed us in some way, has accepted us in some way. And so that, I hope, is what someone would get from me.
Thank you. Attorney Sumter, I couldn't have asked you to wrap that up any better than you did, because that's what we're about, is making sure our young people gain access, that they are being affirmed to be the success that they are entitled to be. So thank you so very much. You probably will have some questions that will come to you later after this time where people didn't get a chance to ask those. And so we will reach out to you about that. But thank you not only for being here today, but thank you for what you do.
You are welcome, and people are more than welcome to call me, contact me at the office. I take calls from young people all the time.
Very good. Thank you. And I know we'll be returning to our sessions. Certainly, you're welcome to stay with us. If I know you've got briefs you're working on now, so thank you for taking out the time. Take care. Good to see you.
All right. Goodbye.